Very cool. All right, well, welcome everybody to the Syntropic Campfire, the closing event of Climate Action Week Sydney for Syntropic World. We've been very excited to share so many of the beautiful projects and initiatives that are happening around the world, actually, that are really towards a syntropic world, a syntropic future. And so I am just thrilled, beyond thrilled, to be on to moderate some of the most wonderful, wholehearted, inspiring, powerful women I could possibly imagine bringing into a room together. And that is part of the joy of my work. I get to hang out with amazing people doing incredible work. So we have, if you just want to raise your hand, I'm not going to go through your full bio because we would be here for the whole day for everybody because of the work they do. We have Jan. Do you want to just raise your hand? Chief Executive Officer, Australian Tourism Data Wearhouse. She is so much more than that. I hate these little short things because I don't say enough. We have Sarah Scott. Do you want to raise your hand, Sarah? Yeah. Founder and Executive Director of Kijani Pamoja, based in Tanzania. Cindy, raise your hand so everyone can see you. Cindy Forde, author, activist, and entrepreneur, author of Bright New World and working on another book. Paula Kensington, there you go, founder, PK Advisory, founder of CFO Conversations and co-founder of Earth Equity Network. Mamta Boryoyary, sorry, I get the G's are all mixed up, raise your hand there. Executive Director of She Changes Climate. And Miss Jane Sydenham Clarke, who is missing in action right now. Hopefully she will join us. Paula, do you have her number, text or not? Can you text her? Where is she? She is the Chief Executive Officer of Foundation Nova Diem. And Jane, because she's actually central to this conversation, because Jane, Foundation Nova Diem, produced two limited edition podcast series, one featuring Cindy with her guest Mamta and Paula, and Caroline and me. Oh, I don't know who was the other guest. Caroline. That's funny. Caroline can't be here because of the time difference. I would love to meet Caroline, but would be pulling her out of bed in the middle of the night. She's based in the Caribbean area, I think. And then Jane also produced a podcast on Syntropic World, the Flight Manual for Spaceship Earth. So another 4-part series. And my guests were Jan and Sarah and Cindy and DJ. And DJ is also in a time zone not really friendly to this particular call. So this is kind of the collection. Has anyone had a chance? Here she is. Thank goodness. Has anyone had a chance to listen to any of the podcasts so far? Anyone? Raise hand if you've had a listen to any of them. Cindy has, Paula has, Jane has. Yay, Jane. So glad you could make it. We've already introduced you because I knew you were coming, but and so I've been listening to. I listened to the conversation with Mamta and Cindy today, and half of the conversation with Cindy and Paula, and of course I was involved in the conversations with my guests, so with Sarah and so on. But they are really quite powerful limited edition series, and so we'll get to speak a little bit more about that in a moment. But what we're going to do, we will have time for a Q&A for anyone who wants to ask questions. So I'm just going to go around the room. I've sort of rearranged a question for each of the panelists, and it is a campfire, so it's a discussion, but I'm seeding the discussion, and so I'm in no particular order. And I haven't given people warning about these particular questions, so I just know you well enough, I hope, by now to go in that direction. So I'm actually going to start with you, Jane. You are passionate about supporting those at the margins to find meaning and purpose. Can you say a little bit more about your work?
Thank you, Christine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Foundation Nova Diem exists to empower a new day for people who have been left behind or marginalised, who face disadvantage, and who have potential that maybe they're not aware of. We seek to unlock that potential to enable them to realise their new day, their Nova Diem. And my partner, my co-founder, and myself are deeply committed to social justice. And through the decades of our work in NGOs across government and philanthropy and charitable sectors, and even in the private sector, have encountered so many situations where people have been locked into their deficit identification, whether it be, I am a person with mental illness, or I am a person who is uneducated, or I am unemployed, or I am coming out of a custodial sentence, or I am drug dependent, or I am old, or I am facing financial insecurity. And in actual fact, these individuals have so much more that can, bring strength to support them with their empowerment, with their self-agency towards autonomy, towards a place where they can, not only be significant, autonomous contributors for themselves individually, but also for their ecosystems, for their families, for their communities, and for their country globally. It makes good sense from our perspective to unlock that potential, to help people off welfare, off dependency, and into, an autonomous life where, there is a sense of being able to contribute to a brighter future, individually and collectively. And so our work in Nova Diem is currently incubating tools to help unlock that potential, and running along parallel to that is a social enterprise through which we work very hard deploying our services to keep us afloat, to be able to create, our core. I'm very grateful to Syntropic World to have introduced me to this wonderful network of thought leaders, and to have been able to bring the podcast series to life through our social enterprise. And we're really hoping that we can continue that series. If anyone has an opportunity, please do yourself a favour and listen to the conversations. Cindy's series, In Awakenings, is deeply moving. And Christine's series is just inspiring and enlightening. And together, I think if we can elevate these voices, take these voices into new places, we've got an opportunity to engage and mobilise at scale.
Thank you, Jane. Sarah. Sarah, your life is committed to creating dynamic, active partnerships for a more just, green and beautiful world. Can you tell us about how you're doing this?
Ooh, that's a very big question. Hi. How am I building partnerships? So just maybe a quick background. Kijani Pamoja, the Kilimanjaro Project, we were doing large-scale ecosystem restoration at the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro. We work with communities, smallholder farmers, particularly youth and women, to get access to land, to participate fairly in the agricultural sector. When we started the Kilimanjaro Project, we had a little payoff line, which was Tuje Pamoja, which means let us come together. So there's kind of really actioning a coming together, and it and how that it's really interesting to reflect on, like that power of those words over these years, really coming into action of how we bring partnerships together. I was on a pitch the other day to a potential funder, and they were just so amazed at the partnerships that we've been able to weave together to get to where we are now. And I would say a tool that for me has really helped in these last kind of 3 years as a Syntropic practitioner is the synergy audit. And this is like really understanding whether you're an individual or an organization, what do you have the willingness and capacity and desire to bring to an enterprise, and what you want in return for that bringing. When I first started the Kilimanjaro Project, I was very enthusiastic, let's say, sometimes that unbridled enthusiasm and that thought that could just bring people with me could have been seen as like Sarah uses people. And so actually with this tool, I've really come to intentionally ask in partnership negotiations, in when you're setting up those MOUs of how you will work together, even though I may not do it in like the structured way that of the 6 questions that the synergy audit kind of outlines, but being able to ask those questions, when you bring something, what do you want in return? And I think just layering that on and constantly checking in on that with our partners has helped to really strengthen those, like kind of the longevity of those partners. So in a number of cases, they're not just like flash in the pan once-off partnerships, they're actually kind of ongoing, and they're not always financial either. So I think also recognizing that value lies beyond just maybe a financial transaction, but actually learning that there's so much value beyond that. So I think that's, for me and for the Kilimanjaro Project, that's been an incredible tool and has helped solidify those partnerships.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. So I'm going to go to Paula. And Paula, you've had a career as an award-winning CFO. Yet you're a very traditional sort of business career in a very traditional business entity, but you're passionate about disrupting finance, and which is a really important area to be disrupted. Can you speak about what fundamentals in today's finance system do you think needs a major overhaul?
Yeah, we haven't got time to go into everything. But one thing that actually has really landed for me by preparation for this week was that actually the fundamental principle that I think is totally broken is the time value of money. And that is underlying for every decision that is made. So the finance system is based on $1 today is worth less tomorrow. It's only worth 90 cents tomorrow. So I'm going to bring everything back and I'm going to discount everything back because I know that the value tomorrow is worth less than today. And that is the fundamental piece of the system that I think actually needs to turn on its head. Because if I spend $1 today and it's going to deliver value tomorrow of $2, that is compounding, not discounting. So the whole system is totally built on the fact that there's time value of money. And I think that is fundamentally broken. And that's going to take a lot to change. But, I think more simplistically, there's new measures and new systems and new thinking that has to happen in business to think about all the stakeholders, to think about the whole impact that business is having on the planet. And I think trying to breathe that fresh air into our spreadsheets. Like I said yesterday, if our spreadsheets don't change, nothing changes. Let me tell you, I've worked in finance for 35 years. If that calculation of internal rate of return doesn't change, no decision, nothing changes. So, and we haven't got time. Again, it's taken us 40 years to get one standard that's going to drive some change. Okay, we don't have another 40 years to then think about what's next. So in a nutshell, without trying to scare the horses, that's, I think, the fundamentals of what needs to change.
Thank you, Paula. I think there's one thing that becomes apparent in the work of the women on the panel is that we have a big, ambitious task in front of us. And I think everyone on this panel is completely and absolutely up to it. Jan, as someone in a senior leadership role in tourism, I also know that you are passionate about leadership and also the development of the whole human being, as well as this gorgeous thing around travel as a means for our personal evolution and ability to become a more compassionate in a world that needs to understand each other and come together versus continue to divide. Can you, I know this is an odd question, but can you speak to us a little bit about these significant threads as they weave the story of your life? You might be on mute, but
there we go. There has to be one. I just said, what a lovely question. Thank you. Look, you know, like everybody's life, it's a tapestry. Mine's no different. I come from Africa, and it definitely flows through my veins. And that means that I've been involved with both local and global conservation projects, from anti-rhino poaching. I then led a project at Deloitte where I was against wildlife trafficking. All of that took me into realizing that you can't preserve wildlife without preserving the communities on the fringes of it. And so that became an instrumental part of it. And I was involved with a business called Feed the People, which was very much around teaching disadvantaged communities how to harvest produce in a kind of vertical farming, efficient urban environment. And anyway, I think I've done a lot of different things is what I mean, but I was always, and I don't like using this word in this forum because it's probably got a tinge that doesn't sound well motivated, but from my side I've always been very ambitious, and it's probably because I felt like we needed a value system towards the top of businesses that I did not experience in my, clawing my way through. Or should I say, I didn't experience it regularly. And I'd like to believe, and I'm obviously still a work in progress, but I'd like to believe that I'm very passionate about working with my staff and my stakeholders and the people around me in a way that and I use a word not for dramatic effect, but that heals people. And what I mean by that is I do feel that many people, beneath the surface are battling with numerous things. And when you create an environment that is truly safe and empowering, and I still believe in absolute high performance, and I'm a very candid communicator, but with that always comes layered with genuine care and respect. And these are things I've learned along the way, and things that I've read and in my own personal growth, but very much through also conversations with you, Christine, and material you've shared with me in Syntropic World, where I found a home with belief systems that just resonated. You just know when you stumble upon truth. Travel's been my guiding light. It's a longer story than we have time for, but I wasn't able to get into university, and because of that, I left the country and I went traveling. And I've spent time all over China, all over Europe, all over Scandinavia, all over the States, of Africa. I traveled, and it changed me. It grew me from being a really fear-driven, insecure person to having a real sense of self. And I guess it attracted me to the sector in a way that I knew that travel was transformative. And it kind of chipped away at the consciousness of a human being in an uncanny way, where your guard was dropped and your heart was open, and you experienced life differently for curious reasons. And I started researching those and reading white papers to understand why people were so receptive and why travel was, the antithesis of war. And suddenly we were so open to other cultures, but in our own homes, we were fighting against cultures. And so, I mean, I could get into a huge amount of detail, but all I will say is travel has, from the beginning of time, marked our lives with all the most meaningful milestones. It doesn't matter you know, when you finish school, you do a gap year. When you get married, you have a honeymoon. When somebody gets a terrible, you know, sickness diagnosis, often, you know, the first thing they want to do is, if they're able to, is to go travel. There is just this realization that is intuitive to us, that when we explore other corners of the world, that it does soften and awaken us. And I could go into lots of reasons if and when there's time as to why that happens, but that's absolutely been my attraction to travel. I will also say, on the other side of that conversation, that travel is a huge contributor to the climate crisis, and it's been the last year I've really grappled with the fact that I have been instrumental in many parts of the world in growing the visitor economy, and, you know, frankly, partnering with aviation, and I look at it now, and, you know, it's a sector in crisis, with penalties and taxes coming down the barrel in the next year or two, that are deliberate and that need to happen. But it's going to change travel fundamentally, and, you know, so I've got this deep tearing inside me of something that I could see changing before my eyes. But yeah, that's a world, a window into my world.
Very nice, thank you. And as I mentioned, many of the people on this panel have not yet met. I know them all. I'm lucky. I'm the lucky one. Cindy, your work includes Earth-led education and awakening awareness to the effects of colonization on climate change. Can you speak to how these two important bodies of work are interconnected for you?
Well, thanks very much, Christine. And yeah, what an absolute pleasure to be here with everybody, some old friends and some new. Yeah, well, I think in a way, I mean, the way that I look at this is, you know, you can see me, I've got the background behind me because I was speaking about my on my book, Bright New World, Earth-led Education. I forgot to take it down. So, but in a way, that's this is the possible happy ending. So that this part of my work on Earth-led education is leading us on a path as a human family to where we can go to our best possible, to be our best possible selves. So I'm developing a curriculum around that, but it's based, there's a kind of more pedagogical piece, and then there's this whole set of fiction, adventures, stories, because it's not just what we know, it's how we dream, really. And I think a lot of the work that a lot of the body of entertainment now, it's beautifully packaged, it comes in fabulously high production values, but at the root, Ben Ockery put this much better than I can. He's got you know, that there's sort of death and destruction is at the heart of our dreams. These are the kind of stories that we tell. So the fun fiction part of around it is there's a beautiful First Nations activist called LaDonna LeDuc, and she says, you know, this dream of where we can be as a human family exists, and our job as change makers, as storytellers, as whoever we are in the world, is to awaken that. So I really feel that my job is to awaken, so that our dreams are not driven by despair and downfall, she says, but our dreams are driven by collaboration, by cooperation, by this world that we know somewhere in our hearts is possible. So the process is waking that up. So in the happy ending, so starting at the happy ending, so Bright New World is an expression of that, and it looks at where we have, you know, the things that we have in our world that are neutral, really. Like you're saying, Jan, we will always travel, we will always eat. So our travel systems, our food systems, our energy systems, our how we treat our life support systems, our rainforests, our carbon sinks, these things. And it looks at them as, you know, right now we step into the future. That's the bit of fantasy in this book. I mean, we work from where we've solved these things. So, you know, we can do this. We can change these systems that are now a part of the problem into part of the solution. How we got to this brighter place. And so the journey the book takes you on is it starts from this future piece. So we're here, we're in this place of safety, hope. The dream has been realized. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. And then we look at where we are with each of these systems, and we take that journey forward. And it is all possible. Everything in that book is totally and utterly possible. The most difficult part of it, so all the solutions are either in development, including for travel and transport. They're either in development or they are actually happening. The most difficult part of the book is the last bit, which is the system of how we think. And that's the bit that I look at in my other piece, because I work across many different things. But so in the work that you're referring to, Christine, with Awakenings, when the next book that I'm writing is called Strange Fruit, and that's the legacy of looking at colonization, looking at climate breakdown, ecological breakdown as a legacy of colonization. And that's the hardest bit to shift is how we think. But if we have a wider understanding of how we got here, then we change the way that we think. All of us in this room have come on a journey that has shifted the way that we think. And I think that in order to maintain the systems that we have that just simply aren't working, that the David Boyd, who's the special rapporteur at the UN on environment and human rights, he's leaving. He was standing down last week, and he just said in his leaving speech, Earth has our current economic system is designed at base designed on exploiting people and nature, and unless we carry on unless we actually fundamentally shift that system, then we are just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. But it's what happens. How do we wake up to shift this system? So the story that I tell in Awakenings and I'm writing in my new book is really around this awakening. It's not about guilt and blame, but it's telling a much wider story of the human family, what really happened in colonization, how that terraformed, how that transformed our Earth system's ability to be resilient. It broke them down. The extraction was so extreme that Earth, our ecological system broke down. How, what stories did we have to tell ourselves to absolutely brutalize so much of the human family? What was the framework of that? And how did we construct a belief system that made it possible to either bury, erase, or deny, or mythologize genocide and turn horror into heroics? And in telling that story, there's this opportunity to just sit as a human family and kind of unpick, okay, so how did we get to this place that we're now facing, looking over the cliff edge really of our survival as a species? Can we understand that? Can we get cosmic about it instead of tribal, and then choose with that information, make much better decisions? Because it's not about who's going to win, it's about how we all thrive. So we all make different choices as a human family. So, and then we can step into this bright new world. So the piece, the systemic piece that I work on there is transforming the education system so that you're not replicating these stories or replicating that we have a system that was based post-industrial revolution, and a lot of the school system is to get people out to perpetrate the very thing that's fueling our demise. And so that's the bit, understand where we come from, redesign how we think, moving into a future where we have a much better chance of thriving on this beautiful planet of ours. So yeah, sorry if that was a bit long, but
no, that was beautiful. That's beautiful. I know we don't have time to do justice, but I did want to say I'm going to go to Mamta, and I deliberately chose Mamta last for a reason that we'll soon find out. But everyone's on textbooks now. So for those of you who are joining us in this, Paula did a session on true financial leadership yesterday. Everyone that you're hearing from has either been on the podcast. Cindy did both Bright New World, and Cindy and I did Awakenings during Climate Action Week, and Mamta was involved with the She Changes Climate panel. And of course, Jane is the producer of the podcast. We will have the opportunity for all of those videos replays, and also I am creating a podcast, just a private channel with all of the audio of all of the sessions. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to them and you would like to, you would either be able to watch them by video or listen to the sessions by audio. That's sometime next week. No promises as to the time frame for that, but I just wanted to let you know that that experience is available if you love the stories that you're hearing from these amazing women, that will be a way that you can dive deeper, because we don't have the time to do that today. So now I'm going to Mamta, and Mamta, the reason that I was during this, I was realizing, and it wasn't purposeful, Syntropic World has some of the most amazing men who stand side by side with incredibly powerful women. And so this panel wasn't chosen for that reason of just women. But we have a panel of very powerful women. And of course, Mamta's work is with She Changes Climate, which is, and part of that is about addressing the status of women in the world. And we know that that is in dire straits. And so we hear the voices of some very strong women. But many of us, not all of us, but many of us, have the same faces of the white women doing whatever. And I know women don't have the same privilege in our patriarchal society as men do. I speak for myself, I come from a privileged background, and it's the women that have no access to being heard and being listened to as the solution providers for the things that are going on their local ground that are missing from this conversation. And I would like to acknowledge that right now. And part of the responsibility that I consider is that my privilege must step aside, but work to create pathways for people who don't have that privilege to find the way forward. So Mamta, and this is the work that you do, of course. And so what do you see as the biggest challenge that She Changes Climate faces in addressing getting the gorgeous, unheard, and very able voices and actions of the women amplified? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you so much, Christine. And it is such a wonderful feeling to be here amongst all you wonderful, strong ladies. I can't tell you how much of energy that I'm getting just listening to you. So thank you so much for being here. As I was sitting here listening to you all, almost being shaken and listening to the power that you are giving out to all of us out here, I was thinking personally of the 500 women that I know in the northeastern part of India who live in the most climate vulnerable areas. 6 months of the year, their lands are flooded, and the other 6 months they are affected by the waterlogging that happens because of the flood. And I was reminded of these 300 women farmers with whom I've personally worked, and how strong the same strength, the same resilience, the same feeling of community, the same feeling of nurture that I felt when I was working with them. Yet their voices remain unheard. And it is such a great question that you asked me, and that is what I think I am grateful personally to be part of She Changes Climate, which is an advocacy movement, which is a platform to bring the voices of those who are unheard, the voices of those who have been standing strong, resilient in the face of the climate change, everyday impact of climate change that is happening in the ground. They're the ones who are the solution providers, yet they're never heard, yet they're never represented in important decision-making forums, yet their voices remain voices of desperation, remain voices of, their voices are ignored completely. I have personally worked with these women. She Changes Climate is doing what is required to bring the voices of these women leaders from the forefront into global platforms, into even national platforms where it is important for them to just not be heard, but to be involved in the decision-making process. What is important, we realize, and this last 1 year of my intensive work in She Changes Climate, what I realize is that women need agency. Women need support system, women need knowledge, women need finance, women need a very safe and secure support system for them to really come out and be there and voice out their opinion. I remember when I was first, when I joined She Changes Climate, I got a lot of message from around the world, from all my friends, a lot of juniors, and there's this message that I got from one young activist, and she wrote to me that what I am happy today is that I feel very strongly today that it is possible for us from the South, simple, not privileged, who have worked hard to come and voice out their opinion. And I think this is what it is. We need to open up the spaces for voices from the global South, from those at the forefront to come out. Each one of us who think we are privileged should look at opportunities where instead of us, we can bring them and let their voices speak. And I think collaboration is very important. All of us need to bring our skills together and provide them the support system. They don't, it's very, I was last year when in COP28, I spent most of my time either in the women constituency or in the indigenous group. And I was just thinking it is such a shame that, all negotiations are happening, everything is happening, and these where you have the wisdom, where you have the power, where you have the knowledge, where you have the care, where you have the nurture, these conversations are happening outside of the policy process. And what is the way to bring these voices there? The only way to do it is to collaborate and give them the platform to voice their opinion. And that is what She Changes Climate also is aiming to do.
Thank you. So I was going to ask another question, but just as a collective, and I know that we've got limited amount of time, but this is a campfire, which means that I ceded the moderation. I think perhaps it might be great for some question asking between each other. And so I'm opening this not just to the panel, but the guests, and I want to give a frame for that because from me sitting in kind of the facilitative role, and I know that the people that like Colleen and Michelle, who we've joined, and Tanuja and Ashley and Anna, we don't know so well. I know Colleen pretty well. That there is your voices of equal caliber here, and so there's such an amazing skill set in this virtual room. So I wanted to sort of frame an open campfire conversation around how do we create, and I'm going to, because that's the title of the campfire, how do we create a syntropic future? And if you don't know what that means, it's where all our human enterprising leaves everything better. So when we come together as humans, we leave everything better. And so this last section of this, and then I didn't have this scripted, by the way, I just made it up. This last section of this is for you to either speak to that or ask questions from each other. You can direct it or can raise a question, or because as I mentioned, the panelists, many of them haven't met each other before, and I'm sure that there might be that as well. So Jane raised her hand. Go ahead, Jane.
Thank you, Christine. I think we've heard a lot about the what, and I wonder if we might pause for a moment around the how and the pedagogy to move forward. What do we learn as women here today to take us forward? What is the methodology to move forward into the future that we need? What do we learn from what's come before us, where we know that women have not been as much of the the process as we should have been? What can we bring as women to take us forward in the way that we know we need to go forward? And where does Syntropy play in all of that? I mean, it's just a provocation, I think, around collaboration, around bringing people with us, around moving away from binary have and have not to a cohesive, collaborative, consultative way forward. And I'm interested in what these incredible thought leaders might have to say around the pedagogy to go forward.
It's just open mic, so just open mic or raise your hand and I'll manage the space.
Well, I'm going to jump in because I wanted to respond also to a question that Michelle put in the chat while I was speaking, but the two are linked, so I hope that that's all right. Well, the three are linked. You're framing Jane's beautiful provocation. I mean, Michelle's asked, what are your thoughts on the United Nations as representative of the human family? So I think that's a really good question. And from my work, in a way, the UN, which has got a heart, and there's some absolutely fantastic people in the UN who do amazing work, but it's really toothless, and it's also kind of a part of a neo-colonial structure after the after the Second World War. The institutions started to come to reshape. Even the fact that it's headquartered in New York, is kind of symbolic. The UN, the IMF, the World Bank, they're very much, they are kind of part of an old order. And even the representation that comes through that is quite, as Mamta has pointed out with the COPs, when you look at the picture of the human, they call it the family photo every year. But the 193, roughly, you'll get world leaders in that picture, and the horrible game is to play spot the woman. If you can find between 3 and 7 women often in those photos, so they're having this event that's supposed to represent the human family already. There's no women at all in that space, and then when you do exactly what Mamta said, you're hosting this event to speak to the global family, to decide on our future way forward. The indigenous people have no seat at the table. Are the oldest nations on our earth, through the UN agency, have no. You shouldn't be representing a human family unless you're representing a human family. So the UN has got really structural problems. So that comes back to Jane's question. So what is the pedagogy? How do we move forward? It's a very tricky question. I don't purport to have the answer, but I love the phrase you use, Christine, and I've heard this comes up. It's not that we don't have the power; it's the human coordination problem. So I think that some of that work is really starting in this room. We have to build these new representations of the human family. We have to build them in the form that we want them to look like, not the structures that have been imposed on us, like the UN. So, and I'm not denigrating. It certainly has its role, but it's time to evolve that role. So we can start. This is a small room with a small group of people, but your reach, Christine, with Syntropic Enterprises is growing. It's fantastic, and it's those finding those. She Changes Climate. You've already built this fantastic community around giving agency to women's voices, but there's communities like that all over the world. It's bringing us together with this framework of how because so many things break down. You refer frequently to the messy human heap. So with this, with an evolved framework of how we relate to each other, your Trust Manifesto being a brilliant example of that. And so trying to create these new structures that both set out a pathway for where we can go, and at the same time as holding a space for a much better representation of the voices who do have the ideas, the innovations to create the new models that will bridge us to safety rather than keep us on this cycle of decline.
Can I just add to that as well? I loved, Cindy, when you were talking about almost the three phases, if you will, in a sense, the life cycle of what you do. And I think the middle piece was about changing how people think. And that really struck me. And I don't want to try and simplify something that is obviously deeply complex, because how you think is a consequence of so many realities of old systems and structures and upbringings. And but to some extent, when you say that, I just know the answers lie there. And I don't want to sound too theoretical, because it can easily, when you have a response around that. But I do feel, and I'm almost cautious to use the word education, because although that's critical, that becomes another system, another institution, another curriculum, another, and so I don't have the answer. But what I would like to do in reinforcing the question, if nothing else, is that if I look at just how,
where'd she go? We lost her. She'll come back.
She's got, her internet's gone.
Yeah, she'll come back. That's all right. Anyone else want to? Yeah, go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, I'm just here scribbling a campfire as we're talking, and there's just something about a campfire and something about nature that actually, there has to be a death, there has to be a composting, there has to be a renewal, and and if I think about when you've got a fire, that beautiful embers that kind of are left, and the beautiful ash that's left afterwards, and I think, well, how does that fit into leaving everything better? Because the campfire, is beautiful, and in every stage of it is beautiful. So I don't know, I'm not trying to answer the question, I think, but there's just something about this thought in my mind that we don't have to be perfect, and there's this continuum of life without death, because we know that that's not going to be something that can exist. So whilst we leave everything better, I feel like there's something about community. I think Mamta talked about women need agency and men need knowledge, which I love. And there is something about community, and that's something that I'm totally driven, because I can't change the financial system. But, if I can create voice around that, then maybe there's aspects of that will happen, beyond my lifetime. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think there's something about not aiming for, consistent, like perfect and something that's going to live forever. There has to be some kind of composting and dying.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that it raises the what does leaving everything better, which is cycles of life and all of that sort of thing. And so it is a kind of lived line, holding a huge amount of complexity behind it. But I would like to think that rather than the world that we have created so far, which is definitely not leaving things better for our kids, that we actually leave things better for our children and their grandchildren, and the animals and the rivers and the trees and so on, including the cycles of life. Tanuja, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Paula. Such a lovely segue to what I wanted to say. First of all, I'm co-founder of something called the Regenerative Investing Institute, where we are trying to change the economic system, not the finance system, the economic system by changing how investing is done. Now, investing, the traditional, conventional way of understanding investing is to say that I am putting money into something. I'm investing money. But if we really look at it, investing, by being present in this meeting, I'm investing my time, energy, attention, as is everybody here. So investing is it is the very process of creation. It is the very fundamentals of how we move forward. So we took that understanding and we said that investing is like the chi, the chi of the economic system. If we change or we alter the chi such that it's not a profit-seeking missile, but also an impact understanding missile, then we will have, in effect, changed the economic system.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but I would like to offer on the question about women's involvement in climate representation and so on, as an additional way of thinking about women's participation, as the women are like the allowing energy, not just the creation energy, but the allowing. You cannot create anything if it hasn't been allowed by the ecosystem. And this is Paula's point, that it's not so much a death, but an allowing of the cyclical nature of things. That allowing energy is not recognized. It is, or rather I should say, it is thought of as weakness. And so what all of our youth, when they get into a job, they're trying to not allow. And so the primary energy is a push energy. So if everybody is pushing, then it is only natural that the context that they're operating in is getting destroyed. So I'd like to just offer that as a systemic understanding of women's essential existence in nature. Thanks.
Beautiful, Tanuja. And Tanuja, you published, it was only a fairly short paper, you and some others, I think, a 3-page, that someone, I think it was, who shared it with me? Solomon shared it with me, Solomon Fellas. And so when I read this paper, it's not often that I read a paper and I go, oh, this is so syntropic, this is amazing. And it was like, oh, there you are. And so if there is a link to it, because it's this beautiful paper around investing, if there is a link to it and you have it, please pop it in the chat or send it to me. And I'll make sure that people get it if they want to read it, because it was, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Just
right. I do. Sure. I'll put the link in there.
Yeah. Thanks. Fantastic. Thanks, Tanuja. Mamta, I'm glad you're back, Jan. It's okay. We were holding the space for whatever happened for you to be able to come back and join us. Mamta, go ahead.
Thank you, Tanuja, for saying that. And as I hear you, Jane, to your question, what needs to be done and how can we do that? I think we will have to disrupt the status quo. The thing that is happening right now, the usual process and way things that is, we really need to disrupt. And how can we do that? We need to relook, redefine. We heard about investment. We heard about education. We really need to redefine leadership. We really need to redefine what politics is all about. And I feel, and if this needs to be done, this has to be a combination of conversations, difficult conversations, beautiful conversations, conversations with allies, conversations with unlikely allies, and actions. And How can that be possible? It is only possible when we create or co-create together a movement to disrupt status quo. Because all that we are doing here, all of us that we are doing, is trying to change the narrative. And unless we disrupt that status quo, I feel that it'll be a long journey again.
I hear, Mamta, I'm a disruptor of status quo in my bones. I think most of us here on the call have a little bit of rebel. I'm not sure if anyone read the article. I wrote a short piece. I write every day, but I wrote a short piece about, I was thinking about Star Wars, and I was thinking about the movie Empire Strikes Back, which is very old now. But I was thinking about how a whole society fell in love with the rebels against empire. And that indeed we are empire now to a large degree. Business as usual is empire. We have the Darth Vader MBAs, and which are considered quite normal operations. And so, but I also wanted to raise the question that a rebel in a syntropic rebel isn't fighting, because let's put aside the fighting the enemy, let's put aside that language and so on, and let's instead it's the feminine piece, but it's also the trickster and the court jester and the the priestess agency for love, those type of things. I think that rebel arising is not going to be a replication of other rebellions, but really have that, and that's that feminine piece. So I'm all for the disrupting the status quo, and that's part of what Syntropic World is about. It's how do we redefine what leadership is, how we coordinate humans, how we account for value, how we consider provisioning and money and all of that sort of stuff. So at the high systems level, it is exactly that. And it has to happen as a group of people coming together, because it's certainly a huge thing to do, but not only come together, build the models that demonstrate what's possible. It's Bucky Fuller's quote, "Don't try and change the existing system, build new models that make the existing obsolete." And for me, I look at, I don't know enough, I look at communities like the ones that you mentioned, Mamta, in northern India, and I would well imagine that there are millions of communities around the world where they're against all odds and with the most obscene constraints, that they're managing to create some form of existence that is hopefully not just scratched out. I know there are communities that it's a scratched out existence. But the models, this is the ingenuity of people, the grassroots and on the ground, and the indigenous knowledge that applies the nature, the laws from nature and so on, and have done for 65,000 or so on years. And so disrupt the status quo here. I think most of the tools and so on is already there right in front of us. We just need to start using them, which is, again, the syntropic thing. So, I also, this came up on the She Changes Climate panel, and I know Tanuja was there. It's like, well, screw COP. Can't we create our own significant whatever it is, like something that is something that has, I know it's a big project, but can't we create something of size and significance that is just like not beholden to the incumbent system, that becomes a body of
I'm going to finish your phrase for you. That is representative of the human family.
Yeah. Yes, and but also demonstrate, and be that the rebel with a wand, or the rebel with a I don't know what it is, the rebel with a something. Anyway, that is not a sword, and is not there to fight somebody, and we're not there to push, and there is a pushy that is required, but not at the moment. It's that polarity. So I'm aware that we're getting about time, and we have too little time. I would just actually like to go around the room and include any of our guests as well. If you could just speak to a short, because we have time, a short few words into hope or possibility. Hope or possibility. Hope or possibility. Anyone can go.
I'll jump in. Sorry for what happened earlier. I've had a busy day of presenting and my laptop died. But I think I just want to finish that one statement, which I think is one of hope and possibility that Cindy got me curious about. And that is that in many ways, for me, it does come down to some kind of thought structure. What I mean by that is you can talk to me about climate change and how important it is in future generations. But when I actually grasp that my lungs are sitting on that tree outside my garden, when the interdependency, when it lands and it's personal, that changes the way I think. Then it's not a moral thing. It's an understanding that you're grasping at a different level. And I do feel, and that is deeper almost than education. I don't have the answer, but I do feel like that is where I find hope. It doesn't matter whether that lies in quantum physics or whether that lies in the work Cindy's doing or lies in, Syntropic World. But I just feel like when we are really shifting those systems and we have those aha moments and we actually have that ripple effect into broader communities, I feel like that is a catalyst of meaningful change in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm sure Sarah loves the sound of recognizing the trees as lungs. Our lungs, like getting it, not just intellectually, but getting it. Yeah. Anyone else? Hope or possibility?
I'll go with a one-worder, Christine, for hope. Us.
There you go.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
And for me,
can I put in a word? Sorry, go Jane, please.
Yeah, for me, it's about amplifying our voices and working together, to bring our thought leadership to life.
Fantastic, thank you. And Tanuja?
Can I put in a word for online or digital presence? Because think about the access we now have as women across the world. And I come from the tech sector where, women are less than 10% of the population. I now can speak to any man via Zoom, where otherwise that in-person meeting always has a little bit of a thing in there. But this way, the power is unlimited.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful perspective. Woo.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
Yeah, Michelle.
So I was liking to think about what Cindy calls the human family, and I like to think about the role of the United Nations. And so the idea that we could actually create our own structure internationally to rival the United Nations is a new idea for me, and it's really something to chew on.
I would change the language from rival, though. I would just invite that. I would go not to rival, to move beyond.
Augment.
Yeah, augment or it's something. Yeah, so I don't think we can. Transcend. The United Nations. But yeah, I love it.
But I think that is, really elevating the work that Mamta is already doing and has, done such heavy lifting to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
Who else wants to? Sarah, have you got something to say?
I think I see a huge possibility in food system transformation. I've just started a regenerative agriculture course myself, but we integrate that into our programming, and seeing what the land can do when you farm with good practices and in kind of harmony with nature, when you're not extracting from the soil, but rather building the soil. So I have a lot of hope in soils.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mamta.
Yeah. I'll build upon my conversation that I had with Cindy. I hope to see a world which moves from egocentric to an ecocentric world, which is guided by the feminine energy of nurture, love, resilience, and power. And I'm hopeful that this is going to happen.
Paula? You were frowning there.
Yeah, hope, gosh.
Hope or possibility?
Oh. I mean, I think, what was it? 3% is all that's needed to create change and to create that tidal wave. I'm trying to talk to 3 million finance professionals. If I can get 3% of those to listen to a different message and hear a different truth, that's hope, right? And I guess that's, and I feel like that's work that I can do. When I think about bigger system change, like, we just need to, I don't know, we need something like miraculous, something cosmic. But yeah, I have to just be careful about the work that I can do.
Like an uprising of women around the world. That's pretty cosmic. In this sort of threads together, Ursula Le Guin, does anyone know her work, Ursula Le Guin? She said the word for world is forest. Have you heard that, Sarah? The word for world is forest. The word for world is forest, and it's like Cindy's us. Part of the deep sort of work of Syntropic World is how do we come together and coordinate across diversity for elegant human collaboration and so on. And we need that because we've got so many brilliant people that have very diverse and different ideas and opinions, but we actually have to rise above those things and come together around a common purpose. And I think a common purpose is some of the principles that I know everyone here holds: universal human dignity, justice for all, a future for our home planet that is gorgeous, those type of things. And so I'm sitting, Michelle, with you on that idea of the something alternative. It's just a little bit of a rebellious approach, but entirely doable. I think that's worth pursuing. So I have my campfire. It's been burning the whole time, my little campfire. Whoops. We have actually been having a real campfire. And I just wanted to thank, Jan's gone again. I just want to thank everybody for being here. Light is syntropic. The more light there is, the more light there is. I appreciate and thank you for all of the light that you have brought to this conversation, to your work, to the people that you influence. I'm including our guests on this. It's not just the panel. Thank you for being here. And I definitely am leaving this conversation inspired to do a greater level of rebel wanding in the world. Whatever that means, you can figure it out. A little bit of rebel wanding. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Have a good day for those in other parts of the world, and have a good evening to the Down Under people. Thank you to our guest panel, and for those of you who joined us. It was really great. I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Thanks very much for hosting, Christine. It's been a wonderful gathering. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. We've really appreciated your being a part of our journey.
it's an amazing group of women. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, you must join us. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, Christine. Bye, Paula. Bye,
Cheers,
Michelle.
Cindy. Bye.
Bye.